So, Clint, here we are talking about Max Holloway dropping out of his fight against Alexander Volkanovski. As you already know, they were scheduled to fight for the third time here at UFC 272 in March. But unfortunately, days after the announcement, I believe they announced it on Wednesday. And then, literally the next day or 2 days later, they canceled the fight. Before we get into it, I do want to remind everybody that this is going to be the new Deadlock channel. The full episodes will be on here in March. So make sure you guys start subscribing now. But these quick hit type of streams that we're going to be doing are going to be on this stream so that we can start bulking up the subscribers over here. So shout out to everybody who's already in here. But for anybody watching this on the replay, we are here to talk about the Max Holloway cancellation, right, Clint? So, again, very interesting how it came together. First and foremost, right? They announced they announced Yan and Sterling for the 72 card. Then they announced Holloway and Volkanovski, and everybody starts losing their mind. But there's one journalist in particular that was like, "Hey, hold your horses, folks. Hold your horses." Mr. Ariel Hawani, a couple of days earlier, tweets, the fighters should be the ones announcing their fights and all that type of stuff because they know exactly what's going on. And personally, I thought they were talking about the Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker fight because he's always been alluding to, like, Israel hasn't signed yet. And then boom, out of nowhere, it was actually Holloway that he's alluding to. And he goes, "Oh, Helwani knows all, the knows all." So we got excited for no reason. What do you make of that, though? Like, what are your thoughts on the, fighters announcing their fights rather than just these random media members who are hearing trickle down things?
It's kind of a tough spot to be in, man. I feel like the fighters need to have additional levels of ability to control what's going on in their sphere. I almost feel like the UFC kind of bullies them a little bit when it comes to these announcements because they announce the fight and everybody gets all hyped up, and then it's like, well, you got to sign the contract now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a move I'm not a big fan of, but at the same time, the promoters got to promote. So, like, I can see both sides of the story. They've got to get everybody worked up. They've got to get everybody hyped. If we're this close to getting it done, if it looks like it's going to happen, then it's probably something that they should go ahead and get everyone juiced on and go ahead and announce it. This one was particularly painful because we all lost our collective shit, and in less than 24 hours, it was gone. Like, us Max Holloway truthers that think he won the rematch and it should be 1-1, get a rubber match going anyway. He's deserving. Like you and I talked about before, it's Max and Volk at the top, and then everybody else is a mile below them. That's the fight to make. So there was a lot of us that were really excited about this third match that we weren't sure a couple months ago that we were ever going to see, or maybe it was going to be a long time before we saw it. And then it all just fell completely apart. So a real bummer.
This is really a perfect example of the UFC's tactics, right? They'll announce fights even if they're not fully signed and ready to go. And it makes you wonder how many fights in the past have had to do with the same type of situation, right? Like how many fighters were bullied into a fight because they dropped the news and the fans are like, "Oh shit, I can't wait for this fight." They're like, "All right, fuck it, I'll sign it," right? So it really makes you think about that. But now we got to spin it forward. We got to figure out how we're going to keep Alexander Volkanovski busy and make sure that he fights on that March, I believe it's March 5th, if I'm not mistaken, on that UFC 272 pay-per-view, because I'm sure they want to keep 2 title fights there. A couple names being thrown around, but the one that seems to be most most justified or the one people are screaming for most at this point in time is Chan Sung Jung, Korean Zombie, which kind of comes out of left field, right? He's 3-1 in his last 4 fights. Obviously, he dropped that fight to Brian Ortega in October of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. But since then, he's been able to rebound, fought Dan Ige. And if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people, myself included, we were really writing off Korean Zombie going into that fight because there's a lot of skeptics and a lot of people talking about that could be his last fight. That could have been his retirement fight, but comes out there, puts on one of his best performances ever. And now he's getting defaulted into a title shot here against Alexander Volkanovski. It's not set and done yet. In my opinion, Korean Zombie, or if Giga Chikadze goes out there next weekend and dispatches of Calvin Kattar pretty quickly and is able to turn back around within 2 months, less than 2 months, we should say, and go for a title shot. What are your thoughts on those 2 possible opponents, and which one do you prefer? Or is there a wild card you're going to throw in there and turn us on our heads here?
Yeah, man, I think the Korean Zombie, it seems like that's the one that Volkanovski is most interested in. They've tweeted back and forth about it. He came out and said that he wants to fight the Korean Zombie, so he really feels like the front runner at this point. I get it. He's one of those guys that's always been around. He's always been there. He's been close to the title before. He is getting towards the end of his career. Maybe it's a legacy fight for Volkanovski, a guy he wants on his resume, that kind of a thing. I respect it. I get it. I think that's the kind of thing that makes sense. And he's a fighter that comes to bang. You know, the Korean Zombie's always going to come out and try to put on a show. We get into the weeds, man, when we start talking about deserving, though. I've seen that word being thrown around on Twitter a lot, is that it's who deserves the title shot the most. And I will go ahead and plant my flag and say that nobody but Max Holloway deserves this title shot. If you drop one level below Max Holloway, I can see them making an argument for literally anybody on that roster, man. I mean, we had the Black Beast versus Daniel Cormier that one time filling in a title shot because they just needed bodies. And that seems like that's kind of what's happening here. The big players, as of right now, it looks like we've got Josh Emmett that came out hard saying he wants it early. A lot of people have kind of poo-pooed that option. Yeah. Believe it or not, I think he might actually have the strongest resume to support him deserving a title shot in the absence of everybody else. We can talk about that in a second. Yair Rodriguez came out of the woodwork and called for that title shot, but I think he's got the weakest resume of deserving that title shot.
One fight in 2 years? Come on.
One fight in 2 freaking years. And it's an L. I mean, don't get me wrong. He looked good against Max Holloway. That was a fun fight. He was competitive in that fight. But if you want to say you deserve a title shot, the inactivity absolutely kills your argument, in my opinion. And then we talked about Chan Sung Jun. That's the front runner at this point. And then really that wild card is going to be Henry Cejudo. I know there's an issue with him because of the USADA testing pool, so I really don't see that one taking place. But it seems like we've got kind of a 4-horse race at this point.
Yeah, I do want to quickly go back to the Yair Rodriguez candidate here, because it was his Instagram post that he made that kind of turned a lot of people's heads there. He goes, "Do I really need to raise my hand at Dana White? Heal up quick champ at Blessed MMA." And then he tags Alexander Volkanovski and says, "I had respect for you before, but now fuck you, you little bitch. You know I'm next." I'm like, where is this coming from, Yair? Like, what makes you think that you are justified to say something like that to the champ? Again, the champion replies perfectly here. It says, "At Pantera UFC, mate, calm down. You have fought once in over 2 years and are coming off a loss. If Zombie doesn't happen, you might get lucky." So there's a couple things that really need to fall into place for Yair to be a true contender for that slot. But I really think it's going to come down to the Zombie, man. The Zombie tweeted out that he's good to go, ready to go. I think some of the people detracting from the Zombie were saying that he's dealing with an injury, but the fact that he's saying it himself, that he's down to do it, give the man a shot. And in regards to Yair and Giga Chikadze, those guys still have, you know, a bright future ahead of them. I'd rather those guys get a full training camp and then fight Alexander Volkanovski rather than jumping in there on short notice, right? Especially Giga Chikadze, who's, you know, fought his way to the top now. Again, this is going to be a second main event next weekend. If you can have a fight in impressive fashion, you know, he might have to take some damage in there too. Let's give this guy a little, like, let him take a couple weeks off and then get a full 3-month training camp or a 4-month training camp for the title shot. No need to rush it, dog. I know you want to be that guy to be like, oh, I'll take a fight anytime, any place. But if you come up short, then you're going to get that excuse of, oh, I took the fight on short notice. No, let's leave excuses out of this. Get your full training camp, deal with your Calvin Kattar problem that you have next week, and then talk about a title shot. For now, I'm on the Korean Zombie boat. I'm completely fine with the Korean Zombie getting the nod here.
Man, Locke, so for me, it comes down to who's healthy. I don't want anybody coming into this fight injury riddled. I don't want this to be just if it's a steamrolling, I want it to be because Volkanovski's a badass, not because his opponent was rushed into a title picture. So for me, that completely eliminates Giga, because let's go ahead and suspend our disbelief here for a second. Let's say they give the title shot to Giga. Are we just sure he's going to roll past Calvin Kattar? I know both you and I have podcasts coming up this week, and I know both you and I selected Giga as the winner of this fight ahead of time, but are we sure he's just going to roll straight through a challenger like Calvin Kattar and come out unscathed on the other side? I'm not. I don't have any confidence that he's going to come out the other side of this Calvin Kattar fight without issues, without getting beat up a little bit. Calvin Kattar is not a man that you simply walk over the top of. And as much as Giga's rise has been something incredible for us to watch, he's not there yet. I think we need to pump the brakes on Giga. Rushing him to a title shot right now because we strike while the iron is hot, I think is a real fast way to destroy a young up-and-coming contender. I think that you're right. The Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung, is going to be the selected option, mostly because that's who the champion wants to fight. But let me make a case for my man Josh Emmett, just real quick. First and foremost, he's healthy, he's been training, and he's been looking for a fight. I saw him tweet a couple of days before all this mess went down that he's trying to get a hold of Sean Shelby and Dana White because he's ready to step in the cage. This man is chomping at the bit to get a fight. He's 36 years old. Now, as we know at these lower weight classes, the older you get, the harder it's going to be to compete at the top level. You start to slow down. Speed is everything in the lower weight classes. It's kind of now or never with Josh Emmett. He needs to get that title shot within the next year or two if he's going to. Of the opponents that have been presented, Josh Emmett is the only one on a win streak. Josh Emmett is currently riding a 4-fight win streak, with 2 of those coming by way of finish. Michael Johnson, Mirsad Bektik, the absolute war against Shane Burgos, and then a great fight and a great performance against Dan Ige. He's 17-2, man. Like, this is the kind of spot where I'm going, what else does it take for my man Josh Emmett to get the recognition he deserves and for him to get a chance? He's the kind of guy who's always going to be on the outside looking in. And yeah, he hasn't fought a Zombie. He hasn't fought Ortega. He hasn't fought Yair. He's exactly the kind of guy that you throw in on short notice against the champ and sink or swim. Like I mentioned, the Korean Zombie, he's 34 years old. He's got a couple years left in the tank. I know he's probably going to be the one that goes ahead and gets the call, but he just lost to Brian Ortega. He's 1-1 in his last 2. We talked about Yair Rodriguez. He's 1-1 in his last 2 as well. He's coming off an L to Max Holloway, and he hasn't been active for 2 years prior to that. Henry Cejudo, he's not even in USADA. He's not going to be the one that gets the nod.
Let's stop it
it's
with the Cejudo
happen.
shit.
Exactly. Let's just stop it with the Cejudo stuff.
Yeah.
Of these 4 options, the one who's on the most impressive win streak, the one who's done the most recently, the one who has earned a is Josh Emmett.
Ranked number 6 as well. So it makes a little bit of sense, even if we look at the rankings here, right? Number 1, you got Max Holloway, obviously just pulled out. Number 2, Brian Ortega just had his title shot. Number 3, Yair Rodriguez. We've just laid out why he shouldn't get the title shot. Number 4, Korean Zombie. Again, I'd be on board with that if that's who it is. Calvin Kattar, number 5, fighting Giga next week. Josh Emmett, number 6. Giga Chikadze is down at number 8 as well. So you make some fair points on Josh. On Josh. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if that's who's the one that ends up getting the call here, but I do think it's going to be Korean Zombie. He has the name value. He's going to bring, what little pay-per-view buys they can actually get off of adding another name there. But if it's not Korean Zombie, I'm down with Josh Emmett. I am down with Baraka or whatever they keep calling him, just because of how weird he looks at times. But yeah,
Baraka is a perfect nickname for him. That's fantastic.
There you go. I don't mind.
My main back in the MK10 days. I was Baraka all day, baby.
There you go. Those are the top 2 guys, and I'd be completely down for both, as I think they will both produce solid fights as well in terms of entertainment value. And at the end of the day, we are fans. We just want to see a good fight, and I think both guys can bring out exactly that. All right, is there anything else you want to touch on in regards to this matchup? Because I feel like we've already touched on every single viable option and given our thoughts on them. Korean Zombie, man, Josh Emmett, I'm down.
I know this is kind of a quick hit. We both like those 2 options. We both want to just go ahead and disregard. Let's push Yair Rodriguez over to the side. Chill for a little bit, buddy. But I think what we should do, though, make your case, man. If you want to take the Korean Zombie, I'll take Josh Emmett. How do you see that fight going? Does he stand a chance?
So you're saying Zombie against Volkanovski? If
you take Zombie versus Volkanovski, I'll take Josh Emmett versus Volkanovski, and we'll say how we feel those fights play out.
It's so tough because like Volkanovski is a great mixed martial artist, right? There's not one specific thing he's good at. He's good at everything. So no matter when he fights his opponents, sometimes it might be a closer fight on paper. It might not be a full-on blowout or anything like that. I don't think we're going to see another fight where he's had with like Brian Ortega, where he's pretty much demolishing him the entire fight outside of those close choke attempts that he had. Korean Zombie, good striker, but I think he's going to struggle with kind of the fight IQ of Volkanovski here. I mean, good leg kicks, good combinations, good movements, good fight IQ in terms of when to take the fight to the ground and when to keep it on the feet. Korean Zombie, good striking, good combinations and all that, but I just think that Volkanovski is a step ahead. He's going to be faster. He's more well-rounded, in my opinion. And again, he's the one with the full training camp here. And Korean Zombie apparently has an injury as well, right? So that could hinder his amount of success in this fight. As a fan, trust me, deep down inside me as a fan, I hope Korean Zombie would pull it off, because it would be a great storybook entering to kind of his career there, and just watching him and following him since, his first title shot against Jose Aldo way back in the day, and then he dislocated his shoulder and had to pull out there. But I just think we'll see Volkanovski maybe around -300, -350 in the spot, and I think we just see a patented Volkanovski performance there. If he finishes him, I don't think so. I think that this will likely go the full 5 rounds.
Yeah, probably so. I could see that happening, absolutely. And see, I think contrary to that, if Josh Emmett is the one that gets in there, I think we see a finish. I think that if that fight happens, no matter which side gets it done, that one's probably not going all 5 rounds. And on top of that, Locke, I got to tell you, both you and I started this whole podcasting thing as sports bettors. Josh Emmett's my dark horse, man. I would be willing to roll the dice on +400 Josh Emmett if he got this shot against Volkanovski, because hear me out. He's a team alpha male product. We always talk about how well-rounded Volkanovski is. He mixes in the takedowns and the wrestling really well. Josh Emmett's going to be able to handle the takedown offense. He'll be able to stuff the takedown attempts. He's got those powerful hips. And Josh Emmett might be the hardest hitter in the division. I know that's something that's hard to really quantify, but based on what we've seen him do, the amount of knockdowns he has had over the course of his run at 145, he knocks down every single opponent that steps in the cage with him. I think he's probably got the best chance of flash knocking out a guy like Alexander Volkanovski. With the size of that dude's head, probably not possible, but if anybody was going to do it, I think it would be Josh Emmett. The other thing is Emmett is durable as shit, man. He's never been knocked out before. That's something we got to keep in mind, is that he's a guy that absolutely is going to fight for your money. He is not going to give in easily. The one time, and I apologize, he has been knocked out. That was when his orbital got fractured by Jeremy Stephens. So, I mean, once you break somebody's face, okay, like you're allowed to call the fight. He's never been knocked unconscious, I guess I should probably correct and say. Either way, I think that Josh Emmett would actually stylistically match up really, really well with the champion. And I think that would be a barn burner. I think that they would be forced to basically box. I know that Volkanovski likes to use those leg kicks. Emmett's the kind of guy that would know how to counter those leg kicks with the straight punches and turn this thing into a brawl. I think that's the most fun fight on the table. Honestly, I would love to see it, and I would love to see my guy touch gold. So there's a chance. I'm praying that Josh Emmett is the one that gets the call. And you know what? I want to see Korean Zombie get his shot too. Don't get me wrong. I know he's a fan favorite for everybody else. But it's one of those things where I want to make sure he's healthy. I know Josh Emmett is healthy. He's chomping at the bit. He wants to get in there. But I'm a little worried, because if Korean Zombie goes in there with a known injury, he's already fighting uphill against a guy like Volkanovski. The injury's not going to help.
Yeah. No, I honestly, I would be surprised at this point if Emmett actually gets the call, because again, you're getting interest from both sides here, Korean Zombie and Volkanovski. Volkanovski, first name he said is Korean Zombie. And again, you have the name value there with the Korean Zombie as well. So I'd be surprised if the UFC is not able to make a deal here with Korean Zombie, unless he plays super hardball and says, pay me stacks and then I'll take the fight. Outside of that, I just don't see Korean Zombie not getting this fight. But the best second option, in my opinion, Josh Emmett. Let's not rush Giga again. Let him deal with his business next weekend, and then he can get a full camp and solid preparation time for the biggest fight of his life. Man, Volkanovski is no slouch.
I'll be honest, Locke. I think if Giga gets rushed up to take on Volkanovski, he's going to be on his back for 25 minutes.
Yeah,
that's how I see that fight playing out. If he goes in short notice against Volkanovski, he's going to get his ass wrestled for 25 straight minutes.
Absolutely. And you want to have a full preparation to try to nullify that. You don't want to jump in on short notice here, because
he's been trained for a boxer who doesn't shoot takedowns.
Bingo. Freaking bingo right there. I was just about to say it. I'm like, he's training for a completely different stylistical matchup here. Get as much time as you possibly can. All right, Clint, I think that's a great wrap on the topic here with Holloway pulling out. Luckily, we have some entertaining replacement options here with the guys that we've laid out. Maybe not guys that are fully deserving of it, but at least entertainment-wise, they should deliver no matter who ends up getting the call here. So just a reminder to everybody that's watching the show live or replay, make sure you guys subscribe to this channel here. This is going to be the permanent home of the Deadlock podcast in March, but we will be doing our quick hits here just as we did with this one. I'm sure you guys are enjoying it. We needed to talk about it, so this was the best way to talk about it, and I'm glad that me and Clint were able to chop it up. So again, make sure you guys hit that subscribe, hit that like, all that stuff. All of our stuff is in the description box below, and then I'll sign off as soon as Clint wraps up what he wants to say here, my brother.
I just want to let everybody know these quick hits, every once in a while, it's going to be Locke or myself solo. We're not always going to be able to link up and do them together. We wanted to make sure we chatted through the first one as a duo here, as a couple. But in the future, it may be one or the other of us, so don't always expect a live stream with both of us on it for these quick hits, but keep an eye out on this page. We will be doing more of them.
Exactly. All right. On behalf of myself and Clint, we hope you guys enjoy your weekend. And the UFC circus starts up next week, so we'll be seeing plenty of you guys starting on Monday with obviously Clint's show, I believe 7 p.m. Eastern, if I'm not mistaken. That is the show time that you're going to be doing on Monday. Exactly. There you guys go. So make sure you guys go tune into a show on Pub Sports Radio. And then I'll have my Lawcast dropping on Monday as well. So you guys can check that out on my channel. All right. Appreciate everybody joining us. And hopefully we get Korean Zombie or Josh Emmett stepping in for Max Holloway. See you guys next time.